welcome to episode 42. That's right, Douglas Adams fans, the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything of Scar Bearers. I'm Chris D.T. Gordon. It is just a fantastic joy to have you here with me today. And as always, Nate and Britton Barron making me sound and look better than I have any right to do so. You want to reach out to them for their video and post-production needs, you can reach them at Nate Barron. Well, the book Blue Talks Presents Life, Our Business, Life, and the Universe is going pretty well. If you want your copy of volume 3, which features my story, my contribution to that volume, you can find it at blutalksbook.com, or you can check me out at linktr.ee/Chris D.T. Gordon. And you can find out what I have going on in the speaking world, also on my YouTube channel, my podcast channel, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and a couple other things as well. All right. Well, I am enjoyably excited. That's the first time I ever used that phrase, so I'm going to stick with it. To have Wendy Jenkins with me. How are you today, Wendy?
I'm very well, and I should probably say, g'day, because everyone expects Australians to say that. So g'day to all your listeners and watchers.
Well, thank you very much. And you are speaking to us from the future. Because
I am.
Because it's Tuesday when we're recording this where I'm at in Minnesota, United States, but it's Wednesday morning where you're at in Queensland, correct?
That's right. Yes. No, I'm actually, I've decamped from Melbourne, which is one of the largest cities in Australia, second largest down south. And we come up around Christmas every year up to far north, tropical Queensland, they call it, where all the crocodiles and the sharks hang out.
Oh, nice.
It's very hot. So yeah, that's where
all the pettable animals in Australia.
Oh, yes, we do have quite a few dangerous ones, but we also have some good ones too, like koalas and kangaroos. So they outweigh the bad.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. And so, Wendy, you and I share a number of things in common, one of which is that we were living pretty good lives up until something happened that threw our monkey wrench into our plans. And now I know my listeners have a pretty good idea of my story, but could you tell us about what happened to you?
Yeah, sure. So I was doing the typical thing. I'd, gone to school. I went off, got a degree, and then I was working, and I was actually working at Shell at the time, the oil petrol company, in human resources. And yeah, life was going along well. I'd recently got married and just, thought I had things sorted. And as I say, more for me, because, I think life has a way of, rocking your boat when you think you're getting too comfortable. And that's what happened to me. So I was, a relatively fit, healthy person, hadn't really had much go wrong in my life. And I had decided after looking at my wedding photos that I was going to lose a bit of weight. I was one of those people that lost it after the wedding, not before. So I'd lost about 10 kilos. I'd been doing Weight Watchers and, marching up and down hills, and just felt worse, and even struggled to walk to the letterbox, which was at the end of a long drive. And I said, that's just, something's not right here, but sort of brushed aside going, well, what could be wrong? And it wasn't until a few weeks later when I was working back late at work, and I had to go to the car park to get my car, and the lifts were out. So I thought, well, instead of going up in the stairwell, I'll walk up the ramp because that's a bit safer. And, but by the time I'd done the 7 levels of the car park ramp at a fair speed too, because I wanted to get home, and it was the next thing I knew, I'd woken up and I was lying on the concrete and my bag was everywhere. And initially I thought I got mugged, but realized there was no one around and my purse was still there and everything, and figured that I must have fainted. And I thought, gosh, that's not normal. I don't know what was, what's brought that on. But I thought, silly me, didn't realise at the time you don't drive home after having done that, but I did. I drove home, didn't realise I had blood everywhere and bruises and whatnot. And my husband took one look and went, "What happened to you?" So, you know, I had to explain. And then we were first thing next morning, I was off to the GP, our local doctor. And she took one look at me and went, "Yeah, that's not right either." And thankfully was quite well connected in the medical fraternity over here. So she got me fast tracked through a bunch of specialists. And yeah, a few weeks later, after having seen cancer specialists and brain specialists and all sorts of other specialists, I wound up at the Alfred Hospital, and they told me I had 2 years to live unless I had a double lung transplant.
Oh,
so
wow.
That was a shock. Yeah.
Now, so what was, what caused that? Obviously, you lived a pretty healthy life, more or less. That's, it has to take something to cause 2 years to live to happen.
Yeah, well, at the time I hadn't realized, but the arteries between my heart and my lung had got very narrow, and to the point where as your blood comes out of your heart and there's pressures, people talk about blood pressure where you sort of measure it with the blood pressure thing around your arm and that, but there's also pressures as the blood comes out, and usually they're very low at that side. But because of my arteries being so narrow, the blood was having trouble pumping through, and so it was going back onto the other side of my heart and trying to push back, and the heart's not used to that. And they actually said I was lucky I just didn't drop dead on the spot when I fainted instead. So that was my way of my body saying, shutting down and going, enough. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock, and they tried all sorts of things. So they decided to put me on blood pressure tablets to slow the pressure. They also thinned my blood, so I was on blood thinners for a long time. They even had me on Viagra, if you can believe it. So Viagra works quite differently for females.
Yep.
Doesn't have the same
I would imagine so.
Yeah, but I was on 3 Viagra tablets a day for probably 2 years. And what it does is it opens up all the blood vessels, so it helps things flow. And yeah, a funny story, my husband used to have to go to the hospital to pick up the Viagra tablets, because at the time they were almost black market then. they were very new, lots of people were sort of, doing all sorts of underhand dealings with them, so they would count them out specifically, and I had to make sure, I only had enough for the next month. But it was a big bag if you think 3 times a day. So he'd be there, and there was this very lovely Italian pharmacist in the hospital, and she'd go, "Mr. Jenkins, I have your tablets here," and he'd be all red and, oh gosh, yeah, but it wasn't for him, it was for me.
Someone's got the sweet hookup at the hospital there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to tell that story a few times at Rotary clubs. I don't know if you have Rotary in America. I think you do. And there'd be a few blokes at the back looking a bit sheepish. So at least could tell them who's taking it. Anyway, I digress. Yeah. So what was I saying?
So you're talking about the different pills that you were taking, and
yes,
while you're waiting for the transplant.
Yeah, so they had me on, they tried a few trial drugs, a couple from the States and other things, but yeah, nothing really got me better. And it got to a point where they decided, that I'd have to wait list for a transplant after a few years. And at the time, I think the average waiting time was about 13 months, but I ended up waiting about 22. So I was getting a bit nervous because they told me 2 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's getting a bit close.
And Viagra pills can only do so much. So
yeah, well, that's right. And yeah, they just said, I was stable, but it was just going to get worse before it got better. So they didn't want to take the risk. They had another person with the same thing, and they died before they'd got them onto the list. So they thought, best not to delay too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what happened. So waiting for a transplant is an interesting challenge in itself, because you can't go very far from the hospital. So for 2 years, we only went about an hour and a half from the hospital at any time, so that we could get back if we needed to.
Okay. Now,
and I had to have my phone.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. My
Go.
Australian geography is not that sharp. So So what
Yeah.
popular places or locations are an hour away, from Queensland?
Well, at the time we were down in Melbourne still,
Oh, Melbourne.
and
Okay.
Melbourne's a big city, so there was obviously all the things in the city, so that was helpful. I mean, I feel for the people who are in rural Australia and on a farm or something like that.
Yeah.
They're really stuck. So we did have that option, but you do get very bored of the
Hmm.
same thing for 2 years because we were
Yeah.
used to traveling. So
Hmm.
yeah, so look, it's a what do they call it? A first world problem, not being able to travel. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a bit of a shock. And the other thing I had to do was always leave my phone on, no
Hmm.
matter where I was. And yeah, that was an interesting one. I remember once being in a conference and the guy up the front was like, "Oh, everyone has to turn their phones off," and he was getting very adamant about the whole thing. And I said, "Oh, actually, I think I need to leave mine on." "No excuses, no excuses." He said, I said, "Oh, how about waiting for a lung transplant?" "Okay, you can leave yours on." So,
Okay, one excuse. We'll allow one.
yeah, that'll
Uh,
do. That's a good
yeah.
one.
So
Yeah.
you are actually you were you were ready for the pandemic, for having to stay home or stay close for 2 years. I mean, the pandemic must have just flown by for you.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. I've had this chat with a few people that the pandemic, in actual fact, for a lung transplant patient, wasn't too tricky because we're already doing a lot of the things that people are doing. We're avoiding people who are coughing and spluttering on us, where we use antiseptic hand wash and gels like they're going out of fashion, and we were just very mindful of touching surfaces and being like, the only people I now give hugs to is my dad and my husband, because
Mhm.
dad's like, I'm still your dad. It's like, okay, dad. But anyone else, I've been doing air kisses and elbow bumps
All
for
right.
16 years. So yeah, it was nothing that different. In actual fact, the whole transplant population benefited from COVID because we didn't get sick like we
Yeah.
often do, because
Yeah.
everyone was doing the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually, and we talked about this before I hit record, is that the pandemic actually, gave some positives. And one of those is that people were being more hygienic. You're practicing, that social distancing, which allowed those people who are immune compromised to operate more safely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it was a good year in that side of things. And look, it's been a really tough year, but I suppose we're excuse me, my lungs are waking up still. The thing that I guess I realized through all of the pandemic is how resilient I am. And that actually was one of the reasons, why I do what I do now, because I had a lot of people who I thought were really strong mentally, and that sort of falling apart. And I was, giving them advice and helping them. And I'd actually been already thinking of starting a resilience business. And so I fast tracked that because I knew it was going to help so many people. But it's been interesting timing being a resilience coach during a pandemic. It's
Yeah.
been very helpful.
Yeah, I bet. No, let's go back. I do want to talk about the resilience coach part, but I do want to just go back a bit to when you received the lungs. What was the situation and what was going through your head maybe when you got that call?
Well, yeah, we'd actually been out for dinner the night before, and so I think the call came at about 2 a.m. And we'd been waiting for it. Like, we always, whenever the phone rang at odd times, we just assumed that was it. And and so we kind of looked at each other like, "Oh, is this it?" And it was. And it was a bit of a surreal experience. And the other part is that you don't necessarily, just because they call you and you go in, and even you can be completely under the knocked out and wake up and still not have had the transplant because they might have found something that's gone wrong. So I've had a few people I know that have, had what we call, false starts. So a part of me was still a bit holding back, was this really going to be it, or just a false start? Anyway, by the time I got into the hospital and they prep you and everything, it was about 8 hours, I think, by the time all that happened. And then they sort of knocked me out, and I was thankfully a lucky one that I woke up with the new set of lungs. So, it was, I don't know. I think I was, to be honest, I reckon I was in a bit of denial the whole way through this, my way of protecting my worry about everything.
Yep.
And so I actually struggled more after I had my transplant and realised the whole ramifications of what I was now facing hit me very strongly. And I really struggled for the first year in particular after having the transplant, which is not always the case. There's a lot of people who, wake up and feel much better. And I guess I was struggling a lot with the breathing, and my body had all the muscle my mass had wasted away too. So it was like learning how to do everything again.
Okay.
Very stressful when you can't even sit on a chair properly without feeling like you've been moving a mountain.
Oh, wow.
I had trouble swallowing, so they had to teach me how. They brought in a speech pathologist to help me with learning how to swallow again. All sorts of things. They thought they damaged my vocal cords, so for a while there, they thought that I wouldn't be able to speak properly again. As you can tell, that hasn't happened.
Yeah. You just brought up that, the fact that we think of, these, okay, I can't say we, I say I think of a lung transplant, they put it in there and you're good to go. It's like a car, you put in a new part and you're ready to go. But no, you have all those surrounding muscles that have atrophied because of lack of use. And now you're almost, I wouldn't say at square one, but you're far back, and you have to, go back and rework those muscles again. When you woke up initially from the surgery, were you on a ventilator?
Yeah, I was on ventilators and feeding tubes, and I had drains, and I was just like a pincushion, really, lots of things coming out of me. And I ended up being in ICU for about 2 weeks, which is fairly long for transplants. And then another 4 weeks in their specialist area afterwards, which again was a bit longer than the norm. And I think my body had gone into shock, to be honest. It really just couldn't handle everything that was going on, and it just, and mentally I found it a real challenge too, because I was used to being so independent, and having to lie there and let everyone do everything for me was a real shock to my system. And I struggled with that. And I think also because I couldn't speak, that hampered it a lot too. I had to write notes to talk to the doctors and the nurses and everything. And that was hard because my hand was shaking so much that we've kept what I wrote, and it just looks like a kindergarten kids on there scribbling. It's a wonder they even worked out what I was trying to say. So,
well, they're doctors, they can read their own writing. If they can read that, they can read
that's true.
anything.
They have terrible writing.
Yeah.
So,
and nurses especially.
Yeah. And they do transplant gyms. So after you do a transplant, they have very specialised physiotherapists that specialise in organ transplants. And I would go into the gym 3 times a week, where they would work on your muscles and building up all your core strengths and things again, very sort of targeted exercises. So that was a struggle, but very necessary to get me back on track.
Okay, so once you were discharged from the hospital, what was your first move?
Well, they discharged me with what they call hospital in the home. I'm not sure if they have that in America. I imagine they do.
Home therapy, that is like you went back to the hospital for outpatient, or they came to you?
They came to me. So
home therapy.
The nurse would visit a couple of times a day, and give me all my medicine and doses. And I was pretty much sitting on the couch. That's all I could really do. And they would try to help me get up and move a little bit, try to swallow some water, or, I was off the feeding tube by then, but still struggling to eat too much. So I think I lost about 15 kilos because of all that.
Wow, that's about 35 pounds. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot.
So
yeah.
it was quite a lot, and I got very depressed very quickly, which I hadn't expected myself to do either, because I'd always been a really positive person. And I remember one of the hospital psychologists, I think she's, counsellors, actually said to me, "Oh, I didn't think you'd be the type." I thought afterwards, what's the type? I mean, just because I looked like I had my act together before the transplant doesn't mean necessarily I'm going to cope so well after. So, yeah.
Okay, so now I want to talk about how you transitioned to becoming a resilience coach, because it sounds like you yourself were dealing with that resilience a bit, when you first were discharged.
Yeah, well, for a long time, and it took me, I suppose, about 6 years to get back into a good place mentally. I was diagnosed with severe depression and PTSD and all sorts of things like that, which came as a shock as well. And it took a long time for me to deal with the fact I couldn't have children. I had short life expectancy, because even if you've had a lung transplant, that doesn't mean you're fixed forever. You're now more at risk of cancers, respiratory illnesses, all sorts of things. So, yes, I struggle with that. But I think I came to a point around the 6-year mark where I just went, you know what, I'm sick of, being so negative about this, and this isn't the person that I want to be. And it was like a long time coming, but I made that decision that day that was it. And I drew a line in the sand and I said, no more, snap out of it, Wendy. And then from then on, I slowly started looking for all the positives, speaking to people who had gone through what I'd gone through and got through the other side and were doing great things. And just started building up my new experience, because I realized I was hanging on so tightly to being old Wendy that I didn't realize how good new Wendy could be. So that was my wake up call, I think.
That's huge. I think that's a lot of what the struggle is for people who've gone through such a traumatic experience, is that you're not you. I mean, you're not the you used to be. And so understanding that this is a new beginning is such a huge, I don't know for you, but it was a huge relief for me. Because, a lot of my life didn't change, but there are some things that did. And so being able to let go of that concept of old me made it easier for me to transition to new me. And so I'm happy that you experienced that as well. Really quick, when did you have the surgery? What year was this?
It was 2006. So
okay.
I'm actually 14 years out. The average post-lung transplant life expectancy is 7 years. So I'm double the average at the moment.
Wow.
So, that's a lot of extra years that I wasn't supposed to have. But I'm, as you can see, I'm fine and I'm getting on with life. And I know someone who's up to 30 years, and I figure somebody's got to get the Guinness Book of World Records amount or something. So why not me? I'm just,
Well, you have, the books, the book is wide open for you, because a couple months ago, I interviewed a man who had a double lung transplant and ran 4 marathons.
Oh, right. Yes.
So Mark Black. And so I'm not saying you have to go run a marathon now, but
no.
you are the sky's wide open for you.
Yeah, well, that's how I feel. Like I'm only on about 64% lung capacity. So, so I get a little bit red and breathless as I talk, but, there's a lot of things you can do with 64% lung capacity.
Yes.
So that's pretty much where I head. And I just really enjoy the chance to be able to help others and share my experience and make, I guess, help people put things into perspective of, life is short, but you can make the most of it. And, it's not, it's dealing with the adversity and the way you rise to the occasion that's important, not what you actually are experiencing. So no
Yes.
matter what life throws at you, if you react in a certain way, then that's the real key. And so a lot of what I do is it's neuroscience-based resilience, because I'm a big believer that if you can impact what goes on up here, that can impact so many other things in your life. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm a big believer in that. But
Yes.
so
As
life's
am
good at
I.
the moment. Yeah, life's
Yes.
good.
Yeah. Mental health is health. I think
Yeah,
so many people discount how important mental health is, but if your mind is not right, then nothing else really can be. And
no,
so yeah,
yeah.
talk me through just briefly, what do you do do you meet with groups or individuals as a resiliency coach or resilience coach? Do are you doing speaking engagements? What do you do basically?
Yeah, what do I do? Well, I mainly deal with corporates. So I've got a program which includes a online platform, so that can get rolled out to all the staff, and they can use that to build up their resilience skills. It's been put together by another company that I partner with, and psychologists and others have worked on creating that. So yes, it's that, and then I also add my own expertise to that. I've also got a human resources background, so I kind of combine the two, and then we'll do webinars on certain topics, which so say I don't know, an accounting firm, and they've got 30 people in there and they're all doing this, and it can actually track what are their kind of big issues that they're having across the board, and then I'll focus on some webinars on those particular topics to help as well. So yeah, so it's really good. And I do individual coaching as well, but I think my real love is working with the businesses. And with COVID, it's been very timely because a lot of them are looking for something to do to help support their staff.
Mhm.
And then I do a lot of so it's free stuff too, in a way, with what I share on social media and doing talks like this where I can help people, and I speak to all the new patients and caregivers at the hospital. So every time there's a new bunch of transplant patients, I get to chat to them and give them some hope. So I've got a good balance, and I've also helped set up a charity for lung transplants. So we raised about $250,000 every year
Wow,
for that.
that's
So
fantastic.
so that really helps with the research that's going on. We're very lucky in Australia. We've got some great researchers over here. Compared to where I was thinking, I was just going to go down this certain path, the path I'm on now is way more interesting. A lot more happening. I feel like I'm making more of an impact, and just having a more fulfilling life, I think. So so it's a good thing.
That's excellent. That's how I look at my situation as well. Is like, it's, if I were to think about where I was 5 years ago, that's when my situation happened, and to think, how I would be affecting people now. I could have imagined, if I hadn't scratched my hand, what my life would be like. But I have met so many people, so many fantastic people like yourself that have really enriched my life immeasurably. And I'm going to take these lessons and move forward and try to be the better person I can be for everyone else.
Yeah, that's great. And you can tell, like, the way you approach your podcast and what you do, it does influence people, and often you don't realize what impact you're having on somebody. And, it might take somebody watching one of your shows or listening and going, oh, that's just what I needed to hear today. And that can just change things for them. So yeah, it's really important sharing your message, I think.
Yes, it is. And thank you for sharing yours. And so besides the charity and the speaking and all the work you do as a resilience coach, what else do you have on the horizon? Any personal goals you have going on?
Well, you know what? My personal goal for the next month is actually to build a Harry Potter Lego set.
Ah, yes.
My
I
husband,
remember selling that. Yeah.
you know what? My brother always got all the Lego when we were kids, and I was secretly a bit envious, but it was very, boy toys, girl toys back then, not like it is now. I'm showing my age. So as soon as I had a bit of money, I went out and bought my own Lego set. So I've got this, mechanical helicopter and a minibus and what else have I got? I've got a few other ones, like other Harry Potter things too. I'm a big fan of the movies. So for my Christmas present this year, he spoiled me with the big castle, 6,000 pieces I've got to get through on the holiday, because I've got to finish it before we go back. So that's my hobby.
I hope I'm not keeping you from your Lego building.
I love Lego. So and it's good because I can talk to my little nephews. They're 4 and 6 and they love Lego too. So I'm the cool auntie because I get down on the floor and build spaceships with them and do all that sort of stuff. So
that's awesome. No, that's fantastic. My own kids, we are in the midst of reading the books right now, and right now my younger twin and I are reading The Goblet of Fire. And my daughter twin is actually, she's ahead of us. She's reading Half-Blood Prince, and so we're all in Potterville right now. In fact, I bought them all, including my wife, like girls and boys socks. They have Harry Potter characters, and they look like Funko Pops, but like they have some deep cuts. Like they have Buckbeak and Dobby. And like nearly headless Nick. I never thought I'd see nearly headless Nick on a sock, but they got him. So that's fantastic. Yeah, when I saw that, when you posted that this morning, I just laughed because I thought, oh, that's perfect. I'm talking with you, and we're in the middle of a Harry Potter land right now here at the house.
I love Harry Potter. I used to, because I have to be careful around crowds, I used to have to get my husband to line up to get the book as soon as it was released. So he's a big bald guy with big he's got a few tattoos, but they're pretty like mild ones. Anyway, he's there in the queue with all the kids, like going like this, and him queuing for his book and his owl for me. So he's watched all the movies, and I fall asleep halfway through most of them and I have to nudge him, but big Harry Potter fan. It's good.
That's awesome.
Well, they'll love that. I think it's a great series for children to get into.
Yes indeed. I know my kids really enjoy it. They run around casting spells to each other, and so it's a great way to bond with them.
No, that sounds great. Big fan. So combination of that and Lego, I was in heaven.
Yes, it sounds like it. Well, you're gonna have to definitely post pictures when you're done.
Yes, I'm taking time-lapse ones where you take the photo as you build, so I'll then turn it into a little video as it gets bigger.
That'll be fun to see.
The geek in me coming out. So
cool. And so where can people find you, Wendy, if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, they're very welcome to follow me on Facebook. I am on Instagram as well, but I'm more a Facebook person. So Ready Resilience is my business. And I also have a website, so readyresilience.com. You can jump on there and learn a little bit more about what I'm up to and my story. But they're the kind of the main areas. And I'm also on LinkedIn too, if people are on that for business.
Excellent.
But, feel free to reach out. I'm very happy to chat to people or answer questions or any of that. So
perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely send them your way. And so my last question for you, we talked about this before. What is your favorite dinosaur?
Well, I had to look this one up because I thought, you know what, I don't know what the smartest dinosaur was. And given I'm all about neuroscience and brains and things, I should look that. So I discovered it's actually called the Troorodon, Trodon, I think it's called. Apparently
they O-D-O-N,
a couple of O's in there. And they said, it was, they think one of the smartest dinosaurs because it had the largest brain per size of body, about the size of an avocado pip, they said.
Yes.
And apparently it's probably as clever as a modern bird would be.
Okay.
And run around on two legs eating little creatures. So a meat eater, I think. So I'm going to go with that one. That sounds like my kind of dinosaur.
I think you're my first Troodon. That's very good.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I like your reason too.
Yeah, just something a bit different. So
yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Wendy. It's been a joy to talk with you. And I greatly appreciate your journey, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah, likewise. And continue doing what you're doing. I think it's a great avenue for people to learn and get inspired. So yeah, well done.
Thank you very much. So everyone, you can reach out to Wendy at her site, and then you can find out more about me at linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon. Again, you can check out my speaking websites to see what I have going on as a professional speaker. You can check out my YouTube, podcast, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and they also order Blue Talks Presents Business, Life, and the Universe Volume 3. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Please have a great day. And remember to pass on perfection and go for greatness.